Well, good evening, folks, and welcome back to the farm. It's getting a little chilly, as you can see. I got my big woolly hat on here this evening, but that's not really what's got me worried here this evening. I mean, it is February. Winter should be par for the course. What's concerning is yesterday it was really warm. I went over to my brother-in-law's place. He was having some flooding issues, in fact, and it's all kind of backing up in his yard. So I went over there, had my big rubber boots on, and stepped in some water that was deeper than these were tall. Needless to say, that was the coldest my feet have ever been. And unfortunately, I got home, I dumped all the water out of these, but I forgot to put them on the boot dryer. And now it's down to about -8. And so the inside of my boots is full of ice, which is not what anybody needs. But I'm gonna get them in the shop, get them warmed up, get them stood upside down. And I've got some hungry sheeps that I gotta get fed here. Well, that's the sheep all fed. They're looking grand. I'm just gonna run over here to the chicken house, check on the water. I get this vacuum style water. I put heat tape around it and then insulate it and keep it plugged in. And it's good till about -17. So a day like today when it's close to -10, that works amazing. It means that I don't have to keep any kind of water in the chicken house where it can add to the humidity issue. Now, here's one thing, maybe this is an unpopular opinion, and I might catch some flack for this, but recently I've seen a lot of posts about some folks saying, I'm bringing my chickens inside the house because it's so cold outside. Well, if you have to bring your chickens out of the chicken coop and into your home in the wintertime because it's so cold, I will hazard to say that your chicken coop, your chicken house is not good enough. You should be able to insulate this thing, keep it draft free, and not have to heat it, not have to do anything for the chickens. Trying to walk across the yard and it's quite precarious. Everything around here was just ice, and now we're getting this little fine snow. My good boots with the cleats on them, that's the ones that are full of water, so it's gonna be slow going across the yard. I did biffer yesterday in the brother-in-law's yard, even with my good boots on, just because it's so doggone slippery. I can't believe, the amount of warming and melting and freezing and then melting more, and it just turned everything into a complete skating rink around here. All right, so I'm all done chores. Well, almost done chores. I got like 150 eggs to wash, but largely I'm done chores, and I've had a bit of supper, come up to the shop, and I'm gonna finish off that here in a bit. But I thought, you know what, I'm probably at the 3 or 4 minute mark here now, so this would be a good time. If you're still here with me, the snowflakes have dropped off, the folks that are disinterested have dropped off. Here's a really good time to talk about a couple of things that are currently happening right now that can have an impact on what the future holds. First and foremost, before I get into that though, I do want to say a very special thank you to a gentleman named Jeremy for donating what would this be? A 2.6 of Pendleton Canadian Rye Whiskey, 12 years old, for our next live stream with Bloom Family Farm. So thank you very much. We're going to enjoy this a great deal. I'm not sure exactly when that's going to be yet. We haven't determined the date. But we do have an idea about what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about time management, efficiency on the farm, and not just being busy and staying busy, but actually maybe being busy on the wrong things, and how you can be more efficient, reduce your inputs so that your time actually, you realize some of that value out of the time. But anyways, so that we'll schedule a date for that. You'll see the update come soon once we figure out when we're going to do it. If that is, I do not get deleted off of YouTube tonight. And so what I'm going to talk about next here, that's what I say, like the snowflakes got to drop off because this has some impact. Now, in the last 24 hours, I've had a ton of folks from overseas and from the US, both, friends, viewers, colleagues have just like, what in the heck is going on in Canada? Well, it's a mess. It's been a mess for a while, but yeah, somebody flipped over a table. Let's just tell you, all the Kool-Aid's on the kitchen floor right now. So yesterday, our federal government, specifically our Prime Minister, enacted the Emergencies Act, which that came in effect in 1988. It took over for the War Act, and basically allows for a much larger scale state of emergency, like on a national or international level. And make no mistake when I say this, do not be confused. This is not about granting extra authority to make things better. What the Emergencies Act actually does is it allows for martial law, yes, martial law, to be enacted here in Canada, the most peaceful nation on earth. And this is where we are. So we've had protests in Ottawa, our nation's capital, now for some time. A number of blockades at provincial and the U.S. border. Downtown Ottawa's, there's just trucks everywhere. And largely a lot of these folks, I mean, they just want to be heard and not just only acknowledged, but, some kind of like, I've heard, we see you, and now we're going to take action. And unfortunately that hasn't happened. In fact, the Prime Minister said yesterday, we've heard you, we've listened, we've heard you, now it's time to go home. Well, that doesn't sound to me like, to what that they've actually been heard, and there's going to be some action that takes place, right? And a lot of what's happening right now in Ottawa has been diluted with some, there was an initial political agenda that was really talking about cross-border requirements in terms of vaccine mandates for truckers crossing the border. It has now turned into a much larger thing around the whole national conversation around COVID and the mandates and vaccination requirements. And it's the water's real muddy right now, let's just say. And it doesn't really matter, what side of the argument you sit on, whether you're pro-vax, anti-vax, pro-mandate, anti-mandate, or somewhere in the middle. It doesn't matter when it comes in terms of what happened yesterday. Yesterday, make no mistake, was extraordinary. Extraordinary, so much so that never in Canada's history has that act been invoked. Never. Not 2 years ago when there was a large-scale pandemic, when there was actually a legitimate emergency. Now we've got some folks on the lawn that are saying, we're not happy. And, when that many Canadians come and sit in front of Parliament and they have a barbecue and there's bouncy castles and they just say, I want to be heard, right? You got to wonder just how bad as a government you screwed up. And just how bad as an individual leader you screwed up. And so instead of, looking inwards and having a moment of reflection and maybe listening to what some of the protesters are advocating for, and say, okay, well, we heard you and we're going to do something. Instead, what the Prime Minister did is he went behind the back of Canadians, and I'll explain how he went behind the back in a moment, but he invoked the Emergencies Act. Now, what does the Emergencies Act do? Well, specifically, if you go on the Government of Canada website right now, they just updated this 24 hours ago, so make no mistake, they studied up on it too. But the narrative that right now sits on their own webpage says that it prohibits public assemblies, including blockades. It prohibits the use of goods to be used in blockades. So not only can you not gather there and create any kind of a blockade, but the folks that were running jerry cans, food, toilet paper, all the necessities for the protests to occur, prohibited, right? Prohibits blockades at borders and critical infrastructure. So that means places like Coots, southern Alberta, they're shutting you down. Critical infrastructure, the federal building in Ottawa, you're done. Like, they're just like, no, get off our lawn. They're going to force tow truck operators against their will to remove blockades. They will pay them, but that doesn't matter. They're going to force them to do it anyways. They're also forcing banks to freeze the bank accounts of anyone suspected of engaging in or assisting the current protests. There was a whole pile of money that was donated through a variety of different crowdfunding platforms that's been seized and frozen. And currently right now, you know what's going to happen is the government's going to take that money. The government's going to take that money that belongs to hardworking Canadians, because they're going to say that it was proceeds of domestic terrorism, and they're going to take that money. Let me tell you, that doesn't sit well. They're also activating special powers for the RCMP. God love the RCMP. What they do is fantastic work. But in this particular situation, they've been given orders to arrest and imprison anyone involved either directly or who may be indirectly aiding and abetting anybody involved in the current protests. That's awkward. Now, I said this was all done behind the back of Canadians. Invoking the Emergencies Act can be done. It's never been done, but it can be done. But it's supposed to be done with consultation from the provinces. Now, the only way it cannot be done with consultation from the provinces is, in fact, if consultation itself would unduly jeopardize the effectiveness of the action, in which case the federal government has 7 days to table a report and bring it before Parliament. And so that's what they've chosen to do. They've chosen to do it without consultation. And in 7 days, I think they figure they're going to have all the Kool-Aid that's on the kitchen floor mopped up and everything cleaned up, and they're gonna come and say, yeah, we problem solved. Protesters gone. Well, yeah, I'm not entirely sure that this is quite the nation that I certainly moved to 22 years ago. It's certainly not what was on the postcard. I was led to believe that Canada was a democracy, but in fact it is, as of 24 hours ago, a dictatorship, and a dictatorship under martial law. So pretty concerning. I'm not going to sure what's going to happen in the next 24, 48, 72 hours, the next week kind of thing, but stay tuned. I'm not going to try and overwhelm this channel obviously with that kind of talk, but if anything major occurs, then I'll be sure to give you folks an update. And unfortunately, I don't think this is gonna just idle by without any kind of a further mess, but fingers crossed, I guess. So anyways, I will have to go wash my eggs, and I will let you go for now. I hope you have a fantastic evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.